Alright, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to one of two parts of a YouTube video that we're going to be making today. One of them will be probably coming out later tonight, as it's going to be forecasting every single day except for day 2. Except for day 1, which is this video right here. Currently we are watching two areas today, one across the high plains in Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota, and another one across Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska. All areas are expecting all hazards, but the tornado risk across the high plains is lower. Here is the SPC's tornado risk. We have a 5% region across southeast Nebraska, southwest Iowa, northwest Missouri, and eastern Kansas. Areas included are Kansas City and nearly in Omaha. There's another 2% region in central South Dakota, northwest Wyoming, and southeastern Montana. Hail-wise, we have a 30% significant risk of large hail across the enhanced risk region, and then a 15 non for the slight up there, and then 30 wind and a 15 wind. A few clusters of strong to severe storms may develop from the northern Rockies into the middle and lower Missouri River Valley Saturday into Saturday night. Damaging winds and hail will be most likely with very large hail possible. An isolated tornado risk is possible across the middle Missouri Valley and vicinity. Here is a look at the HRRR. We're going to look at the 15Z run. This is the newest run of the HRRR, so here we go. Looking at it, we're expecting supercells to fire off 3 to 4 p.m. across Iowa and Nebraska. Looking at the environment these supercells fire off in, we can see hail will most likely be our main threat, given that we have strong instability throughout the whole atmosphere here. A solid hail growth layer between these red lines, white lines, and the blue here. And we also have steep lapse rates shown right here. Photographs are also enlarged and straight, which will favor very large hail. We could see some pretty big hail today. These supercells will move southeastward and become more intense with time. Let me go into the UH mode because I wasn't in that mode to begin with. These supercells will definitely fire off and become more intense with time. The western ones will probably be the more tornadic ones, as they are going to be working with higher 3 Cape, as seen with this sounding. This will favor a tornado or two, or a couple tornadoes, and some very large to huge hail. Storms might be outflow dominant at some points, but we'll see. The storms more east are going to favor more of a wind and hail mode. As we move along here, we can see that these kind of track into the Kansas City metro area later tonight, and go from there. We also see a cluster of strong storms develop across Illinois, which I would not be surprised if a marginal was introduced across this area for hail or wind within coming updates. Here's a look at what the north-central U.S. is going to look like for tonight. We're going to have supercells fire off 2223Z, which is like 4 or 5 of their time. It'll become intense around 6 or 7 o'clock Mountain Daylight Time. And here's the general environment. I know it's a little contaminated, but we're going to have outflow dominant supercells with potential for large hail. Thermodynamics are not that great. Don't be surprised if we get an isolated significant wind gust or isolated very large hailstone across this region. They kind of grow upscale into a cluster and then move southeastward with more supercells firing off behind them as well. Here is a look at what the NSSL does. We have supercells that fire off 20Z across Iowa, one batch in northeast Iowa, another batch in central Iowa, and another batch along the Nebraska-Iowa border. As these move southeastward, we're expecting them to become more intense with time as they move into Iowa, or more central Iowa. This is going to be a pretty good hail threat. So even going to be hail threat into eastern Iowa and northwestern Illinois with photographs like this, very long and straight, along with steep lapse rates along profile. And see, some of these supercells do get rather intense as they move into the city metro area, so it's going to be something to watch for a few tornadoes. Very large hail will be the main threat, and then damaging wind gusts as well. They grow upscale into an MCS overnight, and they track southeastward and kind of die off in central Arkansas. Now, looking into more stuff with the NSSL, we can see supercells start to fire off in the Black Hills around 23 to 0Z. We have one cluster in, one supercell in northeast Colorado. We have another one in northwest Nebraska, another one in southwest South Dakota, and then we have another one in southeastern Montana. These will all progress eastward, with the Montana cluster becoming more intense with time. You can see that kind of move off to the southeastward region. Looking at the ARW, we can see here, supercells generally start to fire right around 22, 23Z. They gradually become more intense as they slide southeastward across the region, and models are in very high agreement that Kansas City area, Topeka area, St. Joseph, Missouri area will see a couple to a few intense supercells this afternoon. The ARW favors a scenario where it doesn't really grow upscale that fast, and it turns into more of a supercell event with a strong cluster going into Arkansas. Looking at the northern risk with the ARW model, we can see that a strong cluster of storms develops in Montana, and they progress eastward. They do weaken a little bit, but then they gain strength again as they go into central South Dakota. This is overnight, and then it weakens around 12Z. Looking at the HREF, we can see this is the helicity track mean across the area. We have a 70% contour where the highest area is, and then we have a 50% also up there in Montana. Looking at other stuff, here's the look at most unstable CAPE, and we have strong amounts of most unstable CAPE across the risk area, with the mean being 1,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram for this area, and the mean 500 to 1,500 joules per kilogram for the northern area. Along with that, we are expecting strong wind shear across the region, showing with your mean. Actually, no, 850 millibar shear is a lot more uncertain. And this will really depict the tornado risk this afternoon, because if it's weaker like this, we're not going to have as big of a tornado risk unless you have a storm that hits a boundary or a local region where it's a little bit higher. 700 millibar winds, they are a bit stronger, which will probably enhance the tornado threat some, as we have these impulse waves. We have one around Kansas City, and then we have another one up here in the Montana, Wyoming area. Looking at your surface to 1 kilometer SRH, it gets high around 100, not high, but it gets around 100 to 200 as we get overnight across Missouri and Kansas, which will be enough to spark off a couple tornadoes. Now, looking into the RAT model, this goes out to tonight, and we can see, again, strong 500 millibar flow across this region. Let's look at the hodograph map for this region as well. We can see we have enlarged hodographs with better low-level flow centered across the greater Kansas City metro region. Looking at forecast soundings, this is probably going to be the best area here in southeast Nebraska. We're going to take one in northwest Missouri, and we'll take one in northeast Kansas as well. So here's our sounding out of southeast Nebraska. We can see a very enlarged hodograph shown here with strong wind shear, along with very steep thermodynamic profiles, which will definitely favor large hail to very large hail. And we also have a mothership type profile, so I think good structure is likely. If you have a surface-based supercell with this profile that persists, you'll probably have a tornado threat as well with it. This is northwest Missouri, not as good of a profile, more capped and more stable in the low levels. Not really capped, just more stable with a little bit more of an inversion in the low levels. Not really much of an inversion, but a little bit of one. You can see a lot more outflow dominance, so you'll probably have outflow dominant supercells with huge hail. Looking into northern Kansas, this is going to be a good tornado zone. Large hodograph, really steep thermodynamic profiles, along with 3 CAPE being a bit better. Now your storms could be outflow dominant with 1,500 D CAPE, which could kind of lessen the tornado risk some. You can see the hodographs get pretty big overnight as well. 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE, this is probably going to be where highest tornado risk is going to be. Probably going to be centered somewhere in here if the RAP was to be correct. And there might be another sleeper severe risk out in western Illinois if we get a sustained supercell from a cluster in northeast Iowa. That risk is a lot more conditional, but it's something to mention. Here is a sounding out of the west central Illinois region, and this will favor a brief tornado, large hail, especially large hail, maybe some damaging winds. Now, looking into the current satellite, I probably should have done this a little bit earlier, but we can see we already have some hints of a cumulus field across this area, along with pretty sunny conditions, which will help get the instability in our atmosphere a bit higher. High plains looking pretty good too. We have that area to watch over here that's punching in as well. We have our summer thunderstorms in Florida as well popping up. I think this will do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll have another in-depth weather update later this afternoon.